We are joined now by Roddy Jones of the ACC Network. We've talked about the Seminoles, but there's another ACC team in Dublin, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Of course, Roddy, proud Georgia Tech alum. This is, what we got here? Look at that. I don't think it fits anymore.
It doesn't. My head got bigger or the helmet shrank, one or the other.
Have you been taking like broadcasting PEDs? Are you like Barry Bonds here,
or? It was a secret, but I've heard there's an investigation going on, Balco style, for broadcasting PEDs. Yeah, they've had to order bigger headsets as you know, my steroid use has gone up for the broadcast.
ESPN, he's kidding. I'm going to say it since ESPN, he's kidding. Please don't do anything to Roddy.
Thank you,
we need Roddy.
Protect me here.
We need Roddy calling games. So, all right, let's talk about this team because I'm excited about Georgia Tech this year. I thought Brent Key in his first full season as the head coach did a great job. I was very impressed with Haynes King and what Buster Faulkner and Chris Winkie did with him because he looked like a different human being than the person we saw at Texas A&M. That said, the ACC did Georgia Tech dirty with this schedule, so they could be better. It may not show up in the record. And oh, by the way, you get to start out against Florida State and Dublin.
It's it's kind of the life of a Georgia Tech fan. Like, it feels like every single year as we go through it, you look at the schedule, like the schedule's brutal because you typically schedule an SEC team, high-level SEC team and then you got Georgia at the end. It had been Ole Miss in recent memory, but it's been Tennessee in the past. When I was there, we played Mississippi State when they were kind of on the rise. Mm-hmm. Then you just flashed up the schedule. At Louisville is tough. At Syracuse for their second ACC games, it'll be Syracuse first ACC game. That game is going to be packed in the JMA Wireless Dome. And it's such a unique environment that you never know how it's going to go. Then on the back end, obviously the Notre Dame thing comes around once in a blue moon. It comes this year in a year where you have Florida State to start, Georgia to end. You get Miami and NC State, two top 5 teams in the voting in the ACC, a North Carolina team that they've had good success against. They've won 3 straight against Carolina, but still a talented team. So the schedule's brutal. But I think all that being said, Andy, there's reason for optimism that this team might not have a better record, but can. You know, the Haynes King thing, I think, has been one of the quietest, really good quarterbacks from last year coming into this season, returning in the entire country. I mean, he had a stat line in the Power 5 that only Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner, duplicated. 2,800 yards passing, 25 touchdowns passing, 700 yards rushing, and 10 touchdowns rushing. That is, there's some cherry picking of stats here. But when you have a stat line that matches the Heisman Trophy winner, that it's similar to the Heisman Trophy winners, you got a pretty good players. Got to protect the ball more. They've got some real weapons as well that I think have some room for natural growth. Well,
that's the law firm of Haynes and Haynes is pretty spectacular. You got the Jamal Haynes at running back, and then Eric Singleton felt like he was ready to break out last year. It feels like between freshman sophomore year, he could be even better.
It does. The biggest thing for Eric Singleton Jr. is the consistency. And I go back and I look at that Clemson game where he had a chance early in that game to really put some pressure on Clemson. Remember, that game came at a time where we were all doubting Clemson's offense. Can they create offense? Can they create big plays? Can they come from behind? And there was a post play early in that game that Eric Singleton, it was a little contested and a little off the mark, but very catchable. He ends up dropping it. There was another one in that game that he had a chance at and wasn't able to bring down. Like, those are the areas that I think he can take a step forward and start to make some real game-breaking plays. The type of plays that if you make that play at Clemson, now Clemson's having to play from behind, and all the circumstances that led to the high turnover game that Haynes King ended up having, maybe they don't happen. So I think there's some natural growth that'll happen there. You mentioned Justice Haynes, the running back, Jamal Haynes. I get, Justice Haynes also from Georgia, but now at Alabama.
That's right.
Jamal Haynes.
And Justice's dad played for Georgia just to confuse the matter more.
Just to keep mixing it up. Jamal Haynes was a receiver during at the start of camp last year, moved to running back, ended up having a 1,000-yard season. Another year of being a running back, of an offseason, of really focusing on the little things. I think he could have a big season as well.
So let's talk about this defense, because a lot of the same guys, and this was a defense that struggled against the run last year, but is an entirely new defensive staff. So what do you expect to look different?
Yeah, I think the thing that Tyler Santucci and those Duke defenses under Mike Elko were really good at was the very simple thing of getting the ball carrier from standing upright and running to down on the ground. They were very good at that. Something that Georgia Tech struggled with last year, tackling. And so I think they will improve from a fundamental tackling standpoint. Tyler Santucci has placed a big emphasis on this. I've been down there. They work on it a ton. They're doing some different things, some different drills to help focus on it. They're doing some different tackling techniques to try and be better at it and more sure-handed. So I think that will certainly improve.
I got to tell you about Rowback. That's right. The most comfortable hoodies, polos, joggers, shorts, tennis dresses. I don't wear the tennis dresses, but the ladies do, and they are awesome. Very cool. I wearing the performance hoodie right now, the Rowback performance hoodie. Probably my favorite item of clothing that I own. I have multiples of them. I believe it's 5 right now. I think it was up to 7. My daughter stole 2 of them, and she's not giving them back. If you want your own Rowback performance hoodie, and I'd say buy 2 because somebody's going to steal 1, RHOBACK.com, rowback.com. Use the code Andy for 20% off your first purchase. That's code Andy, 20% off your first purchase. Rowback.com, RHOBACK.com. You will not regret it.
They feel really good about the edges. Kevin White back for another year after transferring over from Alabama. Didn't have the impact last year that many fans thought he could, but he is a guy that they have said has taken a step forward. They get Romello Height to transfer in. He has made an impact in fall camp in a way that I think they were really looking for from an edge rusher. They get Sylvain Yonjuan, who's a big body defensive end back as well. That'll help provide some depth. The biggest question for me is at linebacker. Kyle Eford's back at linebacker, very solid, not the most athletic, but sort of a neck roll plug guy. Trinilius Tatum is a big, long, former defensive back that has sort of been at linebacker for a few years, has not had that breakout season. I think he's sort of the X factor. He's big, he's long, he's super athletic, and if he can have a good year, then I think this defense will have a good year.
So how do you think this game plays out? Because I'm guessing that Florida State is going to try to run it down Georgia Tech's throat. Because that was what you could do against Georgia Tech last year. And also Florida State has a very experienced offensive line and a new quarterback.
I completely agree. I think this is a game where both teams are going to want to run the football. Georgia Tech in the bowl game against UCF ran the ball 27 times in a row. And I'm not saying that's who they want to be consistently, but they are a more run-heavy offense, and they're going to create some run actions that they can have play action off of and create some open players either down the field or in the flats. Get Haynes King on the move, use his legs. And then Florida State, I completely agree. I think DJU's legs will be used sparingly, but they're gonna test Georgia Tech. Like, this is one of the worst rush defenses in the country last year. So let's see if you got better. We've got a great offensive line. We got some big running backs and some explosive running backs in Lawrence Toafili. So let's see. And then I think they're going to institute more of what Oregon State had than they have in the past, where they're going to run the ball, hard play action, shots intermediate to deep, and try and limit some of the shorter passes that DJ has struggled with in the past.
So for Haynes, he had 16 interceptions last year. That was the one blemish on that really nice stat line that you mentioned earlier. How does he reduce that number? Because it feels like if you have a couple of those against this team, you got a problem.
100%. That's the one thing Georgia Tech can't do. Like, you can't turn the ball over. You can't create short fields for this offense as they try and find themselves. I think he just needs to I think additional year in the offense will certainly help. He needs to not force the ball. And I think some of those interceptions were trying to force it. Particularly, you look at the Clemson game where they came in bunches. It's trying to force the ball into a space where he shouldn't. The ability for the offense to sort of everyone in the offense to be where they're supposed to be, I think will help. So your check down is where you expect it to be. Every route is where you expect it to be. And all the conversions are where you expect them to be. I also think Georgia Tech is not a team that goes super fast. They will use tempo, but they're not the fastest team in the country. So I actually think helmet communications could help a guy like Haynes King, where Buster Faulkner can give him reminders and tips and tricks right before the play. And with the year, this was his first year staying healthy the entire season too. So I think there's some growth there too.
Well, and you mentioned the helmet communication. I think it's interesting because this is the first time we're going to see that. And you've got Mike Norvell, who's a play calling head coach, who we've all said we think this will benefit his offenses quite a bit because he can be in that QB's ear. But I've heard multiple people talk about it, even the Auburn people, like Hugh Freeze and his staff have talked about maybe going slower and maybe even huddling more. Ohio State's talked about huddling. They've practiced huddling. Do you see this actually slowing offenses down a little bit? Because then you're not using signalers to get to the receivers and get that information out there. You can just tell the quarterback, and then he tells everybody else.
I certainly think there's the potential for it. I've also heard on the other side, coaches saying they're going to go faster so that you can get up to the line of scrimmage. You can have a defense on his heels. You can give a quarterback one nugget and then go. So I don't know, man. Like that is one of the biggest wild cards that we're going to have. I certainly think someone like Mike Norvell is going to benefit a ton from it. I mean, there's times where you're watching Florida State on film last year when you've got the all 22, you can see the opposite sideline, and Mike Norvell walks down the sideline behind the defense and gives Jordan Travis like a thumbs up, like, yep, plays good, let's roll.
Yeah,
that is going to be invaluable, as he's going to be able to get in that quarterback's ear and say, hey, we're good, or hey, check here, rather than having to signal it in or give hand signals or winks and nods. So I honestly don't know. I am fascinated to see what it does for tempo. Do coaches start to do things differently? And I would imagine at places like Ohio State, with Chip Kelly coming in with the overwhelming talent advantage that they have, like, I think slowing down, could it help them? Sure. If they go fast, could that help them? Maybe. If you operate under the principle that more plays gives your guys more opportunities to beat their guys, then sure. So I really don't know, man.
That's probably the best thing about this season is there's so much we don't know. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.